So this talk is about how I edit schema markup to 11D. And the cool trick about it is I do that without plugins. And so why do you want to have schema markup on your blog or website in the first place? First of all, there is SEO benefits. Google has all these rich results from snippets over video carousels and things like that, and they are aided by the schema markup that you put onto your website. But the use case that I'm more interested in is Google has, besides its index of web pages, they have another database called the Knowledge Graph. And there they store all kinds of facts about real world things like people, organizations, like events, like movies, like music pieces, like books. And all that data is structured as very simple triples. They consist out of a subject, an entity, a something, uh, a predicate, and an object, which might be another entity. And they use for that, by and large, a vocabulary called schema.org. So this is a key piece to understand. So let's make an example. A person has attributes like a name or a given name or a family name. But it also has things like a role to be the publisher of a website or the author of an article. Or there's a relationship between that person because he works for a particular organization. Or that person knows another person. So this relationship of friends is explicit there. Or a person knows about a topic. You can describe your expertise in very detail to Google and to this knowledge graph. And the goal of all that is what's called knowledge panels. And let me show you a little bit of that. So one thing, if we look for 11T, we can find this knowledge panel about 11T. It has a nice description from Wikipedia, but it also has obviously very structured data of what's the programming language and what's the developer. This is kind of a database thing. And it also, Google understands that there is a competitive relationship between 11D and Hugo and Jekyll and Gatsby, other site generating mechanisms, right? The thing that I specialize in is people. Look at our famous Zach, and you can find this rich panel of images, of relationship to his GitHub, of his personal website, and the social media things that he's active on. And then our queen of the day, Sia. She also has a beautiful knowledge panel here with the knowledge cards with lots of imagery and her homepage, her LinkedIn connection. She has a description, which interestingly comes from Google Books, but her social media activity is missing. So why should we care about that? Well, if you're a freelancer, if you're an independent person, you should care about that because it makes a huge difference in impression if somebody's looking you up. If there's a void and hardly to identify, is that really the right person that I'm talking to? It's a difference, but this is a clear picture. Yeah, it's sort of a stamp of approval. And the same is true if you want to be hired for your next gig, if you want to look for your next opportunity, right? So a little bit back to myself. Why do I care about this? My name is Kaj Kandler. I'm a coach to help people to achieve these kind of knowledge panels in to maintain their digital persona, their activity online, and align it all so that Google and these kind of algorithms really well understand it. I'm a computer scientist by trade. I've managed software projects. I've written lots of software myself. And I was searching for a static site generator for the kinds of purposes that I need to help people create a simple homepage for quite a while. But none of them really was capable to manage the structured data in an easy way. Until I recently discovered 11T, and I'm really, really happy about the construct of the data cascade because it works very well with how the structured data actually works together and is stitched together. So that's how I come here and want to show you. And now we are going to really do that in practical detail. this is my local development environment, and this is my Git repo, and I reset it here to a tag where I started to add to the base block template or starter project the basic schema. And hopefully you will be excited how simple that could be. Let me first talk a little bit about the other option to implement schema on this. There's plugins for schema adding. However, in my experience, they don't work very well. I might be a snob, but the output of the schema is not to my liking. The input is usually very limited, and it's usually very hard to understand how to extend it beyond the small sliver that they actually cover, because they just satisfied their need. Yeah? I mean, it's open source. No critique. It's just not what I wanted, because I really want to have all the capabilities. So I set out to do that without plugins and without writing my own plugin. First of all, let's get some structured data. So I chose to add to the 11D computed graph a schema.org tag into the data. And then you have to set at least once your context so that the reader knows, the reading application knows that you're using the schema.org vocabulary. And then I highly recommend to implement what's called a graph view of these things. A graph is just an array of objects which you then stitch intelligently together. I'm getting to that in a moment. And now we have a website. So the most global thing is to describe the website. So we add the first type here, a website. We give that website an ID for reference later. I use the regular metadata to not repeat myself and have a title for the website, a description, the URL, and then I add a publisher. A publisher of a website could typically be a person or an organization. In our case here, it's a personal blog, so we use a person, and I use myself. And if you view this thing, you see that URL, that ID that I generate there, is the exact same of our next entry in the graph list. So we have this person, and that again has attributes like a name, like a URL for its homepage, a given name, a family name, a job title, maybe all kinds of other attributes that I want to express. And pretty influential, I recommend to implement wherever possible these same as things. So for a person, there is plenty of social media profiles about me. So my LinkedIn, my GitHub, my Medium, my business homepage, my About There, those are all things that are good candidates to go into the same as list. It's just a list of URLs. So now we have the data. How do we get it into our template? And that's really very primitive here. All I need is in the head, a script tag. I have to ignore it so it doesn't get merged with other script tags. I want to have a type of application LD-JSON. And then I just dump my object. That's it. No plugin needed. Now, we have something in the data here. Let's have a look at how we can actually then see this. Let's go back to our web browser. This is our little home page. Still looks like the original homepage of the base blog. And because I'm on a local host, I will need to just copy the source code. And then the first tool to check your data, your structured data, is the validator of schema.org. I just paste that in there. And there we can see that we have the website and the publisher and all these attributes that I defined. The next tool that we can look at somewhat is Google's rich snippet tester or rich results tester. It's a little bit slow, as you see. And the result at the moment is disappointing because it says it basically didn't find anything. Google doesn't officially support for the search engine results the entire list of schema.org, although they were a founder of the organization and they are engaged with people resources. But they're looking for very specific things, which they then actually turn into rich results, like events, like articles, like organizations, etc. So as we don't have these yet in there, it's just ignoring the stuff. That is for the search. For my particular area of expertise, the knowledge graph, I'm pretty sure it actually takes all these things into account. Because when I have the schema markup on web pages, that kind of information becomes more weight, and it's more likely that it actually shows up in the knowledge graph. Well, copying the source code all the time is quite cumbersome. So my favorite tool to work actually day by day is this SEO schema visualizer plugin for the browser. And you can immediately see why I favor that. It gives us a nice graph, right? It's very visually appealing. We have the website here, and we have the person, and they're connected with the publisher attribute. So it focuses on the structure. If I want to see all the details, like the attributes that are not visible, the same as, etc., I can go and look at the JSON in a nice formatted way. So far, so good. Let's add some more schema. Let me go back here. It's probably, we had the schema tools, and let's check out this post. And here I'm adding a web page schema. All my pages on the website, there are web pages, and I want to mark them up. The data cascade nicely works with us. We already have a content 11 data.js, so we just add at that level schema to it. Again, we have the 11 computed, we have the schema org, and then the context here is redundant, and we add another element to this list in the graph. And it's a type web page. We create our ID, and here I constructed myself a little function to make that easier and not to make so many mistakes. And for the web page, I name it, I give it a description, and here comes the interesting part, is part of, gets stitched with the ID to the website, because every page is part of the website. And each page, in my case, gets an author, and a little bit boring, it's me again. Let's have a look back what that changed here. Where's my 11E? That changed the graph to this little triangle. Yeah, so we are starting to enrich. We added the web page, and it has this is-part relationship and the author relationship. Let's go one step further. We have a blog, so we want to have article schema for each blog post. Let's check that out. Again, very simple. The same principle at the right level. Add to your data the article schema, the basic information here with the name of the article that has an attribute of headline, an abstract, the URL, and the connecting page here is the main entity of page, and that points to the web page as we have. And also an article has on that level an author. So I define that there. Let's just look at the schema again, because it's so much fun. The schema here didn't actually change because this is a regular page, right? That's the home page. But if we go into an article, then in the blog article, we have this change. Let me just show another nice feature of this plugin. Yeah, I can move around these nodes in the graph and make that a little bit nicer and more appealing so that I can read it better. So we added this article schema and the various relationships. Now, each article is different, and there is stuff that is specific to each article. So let's add to the article's actual meat. So in this commit, I took all the articles and added schema information that is specific to that particular article. Like here, my tools article, again, the same hierarchy. I added to the element of article with the same ID that I use otherwise, a clause called about. And each about is, in this case, two things. One thing is the concept of schema markup, and the other thing is the concept of a validation tool. and I give it same as references so that Google somewhat understands what these things mean. Ideally, if you have something very authoritative for the concept, like a Wikipedia page or something like that, you best use that as the same as. And we also mention on this page a few things. We mentioned the schema.org validator and its URL. And I'm repeating here the URL and the same as. It's just practice that I used to. I'm not sure if it really needs to be. Then the Google Rich Results Tester, as we used as a tool. And then I'm describing a software application. And this software application is our SEO schema visualizer. And there I go a little bit deeper and define all kinds of other things. The category, the subcategory, even an installation URL. Those are all properties of a software application. And I define a creator. And that creator is Ziggy Strasberg, and I define him in some fashion. I highly recommend that whatever you mark up there is also written on your page. Doesn't have to be 100% strict, but by and large, yeah, don't invent things here that you are not actually writing in the text about. So let's see where that brings us. Whoa, that graph has grown beyond the page. So there is a feature to make that larger and full page, and you can zoom in and out here very nicely. So what we added was these mentions and these abouts. And the interesting mention here is our software application, which then has a creator of this person, Ziggy Strasberg. So what else do we have to add? There's more things to do. Articles have two very interesting properties, and they are two dates. One date is the date published, and one date is the date last updated. And Google follows these pretty keenly and curiously. So it's good to have them in there. And I would like to not have to maintain them with every edit that I do to an article. I would like to have them automatically generated. And 11D has this wonderful mechanism to access Git for that, the first check-in of that file, and then the last updated commit. Unfortunately, it only does that in a magic way for the date field. And so I resorted to copying that functionality into my own function. And then I'm just using it in the schema markup data. I include it, I import it, and all the functions. Case largely closed. I can always override these things when I want to in each article. When for some reason a particular article has bad data there, then I can just override that. Thanks to the data cascade. So that's almost it. The last thing that I nicely like is something that's pretty standard in WordPress, where I've worked with a lot, which is breadcrumbs. And breadcrumbs have pretty good support in 11D with the navigation plugin. However, in the base block here, they don't necessarily have home parents. Yeah, so I built that hierarchy. So I added a little bit to the base block data. And then I'm, what do I do? Oh yeah, the other add is here. The I'm defining in the web page, the breadcrumb for that web page. And I'm defining that breadcrumb list with that particular URL as the ID. And then I go and stitch it into the page. I had to do some modification of the navigation for certain reasons because of the structure. And then I also output this on the page itself. So if we go here, we should see. Oops. Sometimes it doesn't update. Hmm. Did I not check it out? I think I didn't check it out, right? Yeah, and then it doesn't update. So we have to restart the server because it adds the schema function. So that was what I was after. We want to see the breadcrumb here, right? That's the visual part. And then we also want to see it in the schema. And in order to do that, I added this feature set here above. I'm getting the breadcrumb, the all collection converted into a breadcrumb with certain parameters to make that smart. And then I do some modification on that and build myself a little array because that's what the schema needs. And I convert that array into a separate tag. This is the original tag where we have the schema org in. And I'm adding another tag. This is perfectly fine in the schema markup. With the breadcrumb schema, I put it through a custom filter, and then I dump it. Very simple. And now we have this beautiful schema here on the thing. Again, too big for that page. So what we added is this breadcrumb attribute with a breadcrumb list. And that has these elements of the home page, the home of the blog, because we're in a blog post, and the tools. And that works side-wide, as long as I maintain the navigation properly. And that was all the technical and otherwise information. Now I'm open to your questions. I encourage you to follow my lead here and implement that kind of mechanism. And if you do so, please drop me a line, because I'm happily going to give you a link back to your page as an implementer of that mechanism. And this entire mechanism here also is, for your reading purposes, published under this URL. So it's a public website with articles that describe exactly what I just told you.